So there are different types of elder abuse that you need to be aware of and watchful for when you're working with the elderly. There's physical abuse, and this is considered like hitting or shoving. Um, Restraints can be considered a form of physical abuse. Mental abuse or psychological abuse. Typically, this is nonverbal. It can be intimidating or scapegoating, things of that nature. There's sexual abuse. We know what sexual abuse is. That's inappropriate touching. Financial abuse. This would be utilizing their money for things that are not for them. Misuse of their personal checks, forging their signature, identity theft, stealing, things of that nature. There's also emotional abuse, which is intimidation through like yelling or threats, humiliation. Yeah. So let's see. There's a couple of terms that are related to abuse that you need to know. Assault is threatening to touch a person without consent, while battery is actually touching a person without their consent. So try to know the difference of those. Sometimes people will lump those together and think they're the same thing, but they're not. Then there's also false imprisonment and involuntary seclusion. So false imprisonment is restraining a person without a doctor's order, and involuntary seclusion is separating a person from others as punishment. So it's okay if somebody wants to hang out in their room and be by themselves, but you choosing to put them in there as a form of punishment is a form of abuse. Then there's a couple other terms that you should be familiar with, and that's active neglect and passive neglect. So neglect is when we are failing to meet a person's needs. And if it's active, that means we are purposely doing it. We know that we're not feeding them. We know we're not bathing them and they need to be bathed, or something along that line, right? Passive neglect is when you're doing something unintentional and you're harming them by not providing their needs. So let's say they are losing weight and not eating, but it's because you don't understand maybe that they need milkshake rather than a cheeseburger. So it's the unintentional harm. Passive and active is intentional. You're purposely choosing to neglect their needs. All right, so negligence is another term. I'm not sure why it's not popping up there. There we go. Negligence is another term you should be aware of, and that is actions or failure to act that result in injury. So if you don't put up the side rails of the bed and they are ordered by the doctor to do so, and the resident falls out of the bed, then your negligence caused their fall or injury. And so you can be held liable for negligence. Remember that you're a mandated reporter. When you work in healthcare and you see abuse occur or you suspect abuse or neglect occurring, it is your responsibility, it's your obligation to file a complaint, to make it be known. And so there's a couple of lines on here, or phone numbers you should be aware of. The IDPH complaint line. This is if you're needing to make a report about a facility, and that's 1-800-252-4343. And then there's Adult Protective Services. So if you suspect there is abuse or neglect going on in a home, that's not, the person's not in a facility, you can call this number, and it's 1-866-800-1409. When you are reporting abuse, that you will want to make sure to give demographics on the resident, and you can be anonymous when you report that abuse. So let's go through a little quiz question here. Touching a person without permission, is that consent, assault, battery, or libel? Touching a person without permission. The correct answer is battery. Battery. Remember, assault is threatening to touch a person or harm a person.